Hello and welcome to another episode of Off the Rock with me, John Ferguson. Today I'm joined by Brett McKay, rugby journalist at rugbypass.com. You've also been in around the tracks at the ABC where I'm at as well. And we've crossed paths on the raw.com as well. I've brought you in because I want to give the people a true Australian representation of what a historic win, breaking a 62-year drought at the altitude at Ellis Park, and it has been such an amazing day. But I do want to bring in a little bit of perspective, be able to celebrate this win. But there are a couple of hard truths I think we're going to go through as well from the Wallabies perspective. But Brett, please tell me your first and initial takes on this historic win.
Oh, it's still very much disbelief, mate. We did our 8-9 post-mortem, fairly soon after full time this morning, Sunday in Australia, and with Harry at Ellis Park, and we were both, and we still are. I was just swapping messages with him just before we came on here. There's still the feeling is still disbelief on both sides of the contest. Neither of us can quite believe what we've seen, and that is great from an Australian rugby point of view. It probably does the Boks a bit of a favour, if we're honest. And once they get through the annoying pain of the defeat, I'm pretty sure they'll recognise that as well. But yeah, disbelief is still very much where it's at. I mean, all of a sudden there's Wallabies caps, and I saw a few jerseys out earlier today when I had to nick down to the shops. There's a win like that brings them out from everywhere, and it's been really, really cool already today.
Yeah, I mean, disbelief is the word. I was just saying to you just before we got on here that I'm still trying to digest everything, the little pieces that went the Wallabies' way to be able to bring a victory like this to the surface. And for a lot of that, I was still just, even as it was happening, I was not quite believing what was happening. I
Mm.
was still keeping the powder dry. I was watching a little bit on delay, and I just did had to stay away from social media, and I just had to ride the roller coaster. And boy, oh boy, was it hard when it was 22-0 in the first
Yeah,
17 minutes. The Springboks were putting
yeah.
more points on per minute than there were minutes in the game. It was just a painful spot to be in, but a spot that I think no one truly could say that they weren't expecting, because I had tipped a 20-point defeat. And if that's the way that it went, very much in the similar vein that the first Lions test went only a couple of weeks earlier. So, sorry, yeah, the Lions win a couple of weeks earlier. It was one of those things that when the momentum started to turn, it was still being seen as moments of fortune for the Wallabies. I think it wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily that we were out and out better. How did you first view? Let's go first through the first Dylan Peach try. It was some great interplay between Lenny Kitau, James O'Connor, and then a good finish by
Yeah.
Dylan Peach. But it didn't quite feel that we were able to actually get on top of them. It just felt like some individual brilliance as opposed to the team being dominant.
Yeah, look, I don't think they were really able to get any true attacking shape together throughout the game. There was no real point where you could discernibly say, okay, this is how they're trying to play. There was just little moments, and it was moments of players taking an opportunity, and that's what basically was the crux of all six tries. Um, Peach's try was a classic example of that. They were sort of just inside the box 22, not really doing a whole lot. If they were in centre field instead of out on the left edge, you'd go, well, someone might as well have a shot at drop goal here. There is nothing going on, and Lenny Kitau just sort of started farming left, offloads to O'Connor, who got a quick offload back to him. And it's that quick offload, and it actually took me a couple of replays to realise it was actually O'Connor. It was the speed of that second offload and Ikitau's peel on the outside that suddenly creates the 2-on-1. And
Mm.
so it's a superb piece of finishing from Ikitau. It's from Peach, I should say. Ikitau's vision is it was not unlike the Jorgensen try against England at Twickenham last year. Where there was just a little something that Ikitau's seen, creates 2-on-1, gets the pass away, finish in the corner. It was extraordinary. But again, at that point, even when he misses the conversion, 22-5, I'm thinking, all right, well, lessons from the Lions series says that they've got to have to be really good in these next 5 minutes because, we saw however many times the Lions scored next and then next again. And the Wallabies would just never able to, put points on the back of points. So that's very much why at halftime I was, almost, uh, almost what was lauding the fact that it was only 22-5 at halftime. And that was a significant result for the Wallabies at that point because that really stemmed the bleeding. To be brutally honest, because at 22-0 after 90 minutes, whatever it was ominous. However you want to look at it, it wasn't looking great at all.
So I do want to talk about O'Connor, but because actually, no, I think we will go there. I think let's talk about the game of James O'Connor because
Yeah,
he had some quite poor involvements in the first 20 minutes. He threw a hospital pass to Len Ikitau in center field as they were retreating. He didn't kick particularly well, and then he struggled a little bit to be able to find a proper flow and kind of the cadence of the way that the Wallabies structured their game. And I was dreading the headlines for him in those first 20 minutes
yeah,
because it was reminiscent of his poor performance back in San Juan when his last test that he played for the Wallabies against Argentina. And it just goes to show that a little bit of credit is due for the young playmakers of the Wallabies that have been playing for him because it is not easy. No matter if you've played
no,
your 65th cap and you've got a career that spans 16 years like it does for James O'Connor, or you're one of the young guns that have under 30, around 30 for Noel Lacio, but then under for the likes of Ben Donaldson and Tom Liner. But tell me what you liked about James O'Connor's game, because we do have to say that he had a good game in the end, but it was far from perfect.
yeah. Oh, yeah. It's certainly and I wouldn't even say it was a classic number 10 game.
Mm.
I'm sort of loath to criticize his first 20 minutes because he was far from alone there. And I made the point on the socials that I was surprised that the Wallabies had 30% possession in those first 20 minutes because I was buggered if I could remember when they had the ball. So they were well beaten at that in that first quarter. I think he, like most of the Wallabies, just got into the game and then got better and gained confidence with every positive touch and every positive moment interaction that they had. They're still the midfield connection with him and the centers still is a long way off being ideal, but they were able to find each other when it mattered, and he was able to get the ball to Ikitau and to Suli in with enough time and space that they were able to do something and they were able to spark something, which then sparked something else. So, yeah, it wasn't because O'Connor was running any great series of run around plays, or it wasn't a fly half masterclass or anything like that. But he did the job that was asked of him. I think the Wallabies played a fairly deliberately simple plan for O'Connor's involvement. We've got to remember this is a guy who's played 14 minutes a game basically all year. This would be even thinking about his last few seasons at the Reds, there wouldn't be many 80-minute performances in that.
Mm.
So, he's potentially played his first 80 minutes of rugby in several years, and he's done it at test level in South Africa at Ellis Park. It's a hell of a turnaround. And so the redemption stories, and I've been joking with a few mates, the redemption stories are pre-written. They just need the result to slot in.
Yeah.
They'll go out. They'll go out on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, probably right up until kick off in Cape Town next weekend.
Yeah, and we're so happy for James O'Connor. It
Of
was
course.
really, really a great performance, and we are so happy that he seemed to be able to grow into the game. And after the game, he wasn't saying, "Wow, what a game from me." He was very much about the team, and he was just happy to be there. And
Mm.
uh, you know, I guess moments of relief also being able to come back and have an impact like that, just being part of the team. Let's turn our attention to the Springboks because we do have to
Yeah.
talk about the opposition. And I think for the first, like I said, for the first 17 minutes, it was all the Springboks. Arendse scores in the first/second minute. Lebok converts. Then Lebok gets a penalty goal in the 8th minute. Esterhazen scores in the 12th minute. Polisi in the 17th minute. And that's after that conversion from Lebok in the 18th. That's the end of their reign of power.
Yeah.
But what I really liked from the Springboks was that, of course, they'd done their homework on attack. Tony Brown, well done. And what they did was they always had the inside man trailing from either the second last man out or the winger, always coming back and backing up, because that's where they found the space. They found the
Yeah.
space of getting tackled on the outside and passing it back into whoever was following on the inside. And that's why the Wallabies defense wasn't working. And that was their way to expose them. So they allowed the Wallabies to push them out wide, as the defense is supposed to do for the Wallabies,
Mm.
which is their connected line speed defense. But then they took it to the next level compared to what the Lions could do. And they had that support runner again dent the line and be able to make it over the
Mm.
gain line. So the Wallabies weren't missing tackles. Let's be very clear. They were tackling at 88%, which was their second best
Yeah,
defensive
right.
effort across the last 4 tests. But sorry, the last 3 tests, the 4 tests, not including the Fijian game. But it was the South Africans' ability to be able to keep the ball moving. And I'm sure you're
Mm.
aware that once a line break gets made, then there's a much lower chance of scoring if there is a resulting ruck. And I'm not saying that they
Yeah.
did get line breaks because the Wallabies made their tackles, but they were able to capitalize on that half line break to turn it into a full line break because they had that support. And I just think that when you have dangerous players like Jesse Creel, Edwil van der Merven, who we now know because he was terrifying in the air for being such a small scrum cap wearing man. He was dominating us in the air. And that was another
Yeah.
thing. Curtly Aronson and Edwil van der Merwe, as well as being elite in those attacking channels out wide, being able to support the players that made those half breaks, they were elite in the air. And the Wallabies had no answer. It looked really
Mm.
ominous.
Yeah, it did. And the thing worth considering there is that Curtly Aronson plays so much of his rugby on the right wing, yet was on the left for this game. And you're right. Everything that you've said there is true. Is true. I'm surprised that the tackle success rate was so high, and so I suppose the counter to that was that there would be a lot of not missed tackles, if that makes sense. Like they
Mm,
didn't even get a hand on someone, so
yeah,
you can't count it as a missed tackle,
very good point.
which is the scrum half mantra.
Mm,
But they did find space. There was the Wallabies were really passive in the outside channels again, very similar to how they were in Brisbane, the first Lions test, and the Boks were able to make ground at will, basically. There was a bit of laziness on the ruck edges as well. Like, yeah, that's where Khaleesi gets through for his try.
mm,
There was a few breaks up through the middle like that. So it was clinical stuff from the
mm,
box. And so the question then, I suppose, is why did it stop? Like
mm,
I can't really think of I still can't really think of anything in particular that the Wallabies did that
mm,
threw the box off their game so much that they didn't even really go back to that for
mm,
the course of the next hour.
mm,
And it was, if the box were in gold jerseys, I'd say I recognise that because it was a classic case of everything that goes wrong did anything that can go wrong did go wrong for them, and suddenly, they're losing aerial contests. Jorgensen must have won, I don't know, 4 out of 5, 4 out of 6, maybe in that last hour. Wright was finding space up through the middle and making line breaks. There was connection on the outside edges. Kellaway was making breaks. They were supporting each other, and everything that we think about the Springboks and what's made them such a great team over the last couple of years, it just disappeared. And I haven't watched it back, but from my understanding of Rassie Erasmus in the press conference was that he couldn't put his finger on it at that point, and he was embarrassed that it happened because from a coaching group point of view, who does so much planning, so much analysis, so much of everything,
mm,
for them not to have an answer for something like that, that's going to grate them for the rest of the week. So
mm.
you're right. Celebrate this while we can because we know what's coming next weekend, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. It's a frightening prospect to have to play them 2 weeks in a row. Even more so when you get when you beat them, and then you're fearing a thumping the following week for retribution.
Mm.
But sticking with the Springboks, they were unnaturally poor in the penalty count. According to
Yes,
Rugby Pass, we won the penalty count 4-10. That
yes,
is
yes.
staggering. That is. I think Mal Valores, who is a great statistician and
Right,
friend of
yeah,
all of us on X, he says I think the stat number is something crazy. Like this is the fewest amount of penalties we've conceded for quite some time in a collective amount of games. So it is really impressive. And I think that also hurts when I think the Springboks didn't get enough pay out of potentially how dominant they were in a few of the scrums. But I think that also was reflected in the Wallabies' strength of the scrum throughout the Lions series. We quite didn't get enough pay out of some of the scrums that we were
yeah,
doing quite well in. So I was very surprised at at that. But and Ben O'Keefe told them to play the ball away so, after a scrum had gone down supposedly to both sides. I actually do
yeah,
think the South Africans probably deserved a little bit more pay out of that. So
yeah,
I wrote in my Rugby Pass column this week that the Wallabies just had to survive the scrum battle, and that's what they did. You cannot say at any
yeah,
point the Wallabies had the upper hand, and so that was really really good because that's what needed to happen. Tani Latupo was hardly the bollocking ball runner in the field of play as he was against the Lions in the third test, but he definitely held his end up on the scrum. Probably helped out
mm,
his Brumbies teammates in James Slipper and Billy Pollard in the scrum. But then I want to get your take on the line out because the line out
yeah,
was not great from the Springboks either, only operating at 69%, which is
yeah.
quite poor. And the Wallabies only operated at 78%, but
I was going
they
to
were
ask you
somehow made to look
what the
good.
Wallabies won. Yeah, I was going to ask you
Yeah.
what the Wallabies lineup was as well. Nick Frost was extraordinary, and I've seen I generally ratings. I'm just not interested in them because they're rarely going to reflect how you see a game. But I happened to see one and it had Nick Frost was a 7. It was like, it was serviceable and line out a couple of handy steals. I was like, oh, he was a bit more than serviceable. He was just about the best player on the field in terms of line out. He was extraordinary. He pinched, I'll say 4. It could easily be more than that. But they
Yeah.
were at crucial times. They were really important. And so the Wallabies were having a major impact on severely disrupting the Springbok supply of ball. But conversely, there was a 25-minute period there where Billy Pollard missed his target a few times, and the Wallabies got picked off as well. And unfortunately for Billy, this has been fairly consistent in his game in 2025. And I could go back to notes taken in round 3 of Super Rugby where suddenly the Brumbies lineout just goes off.
Mm.
And it carried all the way through. He just just didn't quite seem to fix it. And then even when Panga and Mosa comes on, it was I don't know that he actually threw into too many lineouts by that stage. I must admit.
No.
So they were they got through. Survive is the right word, but the lineout display they'll take a lot of confidence out of because of the way they were able to disrupt the Springboks ball and the way they were able to nullify so much of their attack that is built off the back of good line-out ball, like so many good teams is these days. So they'll take plenty out of that. On scrums, I'll give Zane Nongor a rap. He not long after he came on, there was first
Great
scrum.
shout.
They might have even went in and Ben O'Keefe blew it up, and he actually says to Zane, he pulls him out. He says, "Zane, we've had great balance. I know you just come on, but you've got to do." And I can't remember what he said. You've got to do X, Y, Z.
Yep.
And from that point on, he obviously gave the picture that Ben O'Keefe wanted to see because there was no more scrum penalties after that.
Mm.
They did a really really good job of that. So you're right. It was surprising to see the Wallabies penalty count so low. It's been coming down under Joe Schmidt. It was up. It was 10 or a dozen or 14 penalties a game through the back end of Dave Rennie. It was no better through Eddie
Yep.
Jones. I think even
Mm.
last year through Schmidt, I think he maybe got it down near near
They're about
10.
10.
I
Yeah.
think this year it's maybe just slipped under 8, which is
Mm,
extraordinary.
mm.
But 4 is still an outlier there, isn't it, mate? So it's
Oh,
it's really good. And then on conversely, the Box were under significant pressure not to infringe in their 22 anymore. They went on they were on yellow card warning in the 51st minute, I think.
yeah. Eben Etzebeth got a talking to by
He
Beneke.
did, he
Yep.
did. But the Wallabies never actually really got back in to attack
Mm,
from that point. And I mentioned that this on the 8-9. They did everything they did from then on basically happened from halfway or well outside the 22. So they never got a chance to test whether that yellow card warning was really there and was really live, but they didn't
mm.
have to, I suppose. And
Yeah.
um, by that stage, bounce of the ball had become good luck, had become momentum, had become scoreboard pressure, had become a 16-point bonus point win at Ellis Park.
Mm.
Simple
So
game, rugby.
exactly. Whilst you and I sit here relatively clueless about how they managed to maintain that over 60 minutes in the back half of
Yeah.
that.
I'm putting it
So
down to the only couple of hours of sleep that I've had.
yeah, exactly. A bit discombobulated. I just want to quote the stat that I got from Mal now that he put on his own X profile that you can go check out. He's great.
Yeah.
It says no cards for the seventh test, a longest streak since 2017 for the Wallabies. So
Mm.
no card. Number of penalties versus Oz wins in South Africa Pro era of 30 years. So like it's the fourth most, least rather. And it's regards to tries. 6 tries, that is. Most tries in South Africa equal most to ever, which was Brisbane
Yeah, right.
2006. So
Yeah.
it was an anomaly. The entire game was just a
Yeah.
massive anomaly.
Yeah.
But then heading on to what the Wallabies did well, and you and I will try to figure out some sort of way that it turned. And I think the number one thing that made it turn was the unflappable nature of the entire Wallabies team when things went wrong. They just went about the next task. Because
Mm.
even throughout the entire crusade, um, Tom Wright kicks a ball. No, sorry, James O'Connor kicks a ball dead from his own half on a really good clearance. Only at
Yes.
altitude can you kick it,
70 meters he kicked it.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
He's never kicked a ball that big in his life.
No.
But it just kept rolling and kept going. And through that, they kind of shrugged it off, almost Finn Russell-esque, and just kept on going about their business. And also, what I really enjoy in this game was that we are not talking about Will Skelton. We're not talking about Joseph Akuso Suali'i necessarily. We are talking about a team that came together and just did what they needed to do. James Slipper got a steal. Tom Hooper was a menace in the
Yeah.
breakdown.
Yeah.
Not necessarily
Yeah.
dominant contact, but just able to be enough of a
Picked
nuisance
his
and enough of
moments.
a handful.
Yeah.
And then Harry Wilson, he is not a battering ram at test level. At Super Rugby level, he can go over blokes, but he is better when he's being deft with his hands and he's being the kind of high IQ footballer that we know that he is. He's such a good all-round sportsman, very, very, very capable cricketer, but he
Mm.
is just one of those players that couldn't believe that he was running the supporting line for Tom Wright
For
there to be
Tom
able to
Wright.
go
Yeah.
through because that's a line that I usually see Fraser McRae run. And Fraser McRae
Yeah.
himself was absolutely massive, topping the tackle count at 21. The closest person behind him was Evan Etzebeth on 16. So I think
Yeah.
Fraser
Right.
McRae missed one. I just want to talk through some of the key Wallabies performances. And I think we'll start with a positive slash a negative with Joseph Akuso Suali'i. He's still defensively extremely exposed and made a couple of
Mm.
misreads.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the intercept and his great show of speed, which I didn't think he had in him, outstripping Edwill van der Merwe, almost starting at the same line, but obviously Joseph had the momentum to be going forward where Edwill had to retreat. But um, I think that now with Dylan Peach out, Hamish Stewart is already on his way over to be able to cover the back three with Dylan Peach. That SOS has been sent out. This could be an opportunity where we see Hunter Paisami come into the 12 channel and Joseph Kuso Suali'i pushed out one. It's just it was ominous because if Suali'i doesn't get that intercept, that is a 3 or 4 Springbok on one Wallaby fullback defender. It was looking
Yeah.
bare as hell. So I- I'm so happy with the win, but we do have to be
Yeah.
realistic about how this kind of came about.
So on the intercept, and I said in our post mortem that I still wasn't sure how he managed to get that intercept. Having now watched it again, watched a couple more replays, I didn't realize how bad Marnie Libok's pass was. It was nearly forward. That's how far in front of his runners he's threw it. He's basically thrown it straight to Suaalii. So it wasn't so much that Suaalii's anticipated it really well and he's just picked it off. He's basically stood there and caught it and run 60 meters. It was
He was a bit
genuinely
surprised that he caught it as well.
yeah, it was genuinely a terrible pass. And the side on angle showed how far in front it was going to be. So yeah, look, it was a threat. Whether they would have pulled it off if the pass makes its mark, I don't know, because I don't know the pass was going to make its mark is what I'm trying to get at there. He's There was a few moments in defence where his rugby league instincts were still there, and so his first contact was high-ish around the chest. He was trying to wrap up ball, if anything, more than anything, um, and sometimes he might have even got, I think Esterhuizen might have even pushed him off at one point, and he's managed to have it come back and have a second go and wrap him up. I think there's definitely work there to do. Yeah, what sort of, if Donaldson's now out for a few weeks by the sounds of it, and definitely won't play in Cape Town. That's what Hamish Stewart is en route for. Dylan Peach looks like it might be a jaw. Looks like he's going to be in a bit of trouble. I think there's fingers and everything else crossed that Harry Wilson hasn't done a serious knee injury, which
Egg Chase's YouTube after the game saw him on crutches with an ice pack and then being wheeled off by a medicab after the press conference
yeah.
or after the on-match stuff. So
And
I'd be
Schmidt
very
said in the press
surprised to see him
conference that he
on.
was going for scans. So,
Mm.
but even he said, we're kind of hoping that he's maybe only twisted it and maybe it's not so bad. Um, so because you wouldn't want to do an ACL while scoring a try, would you?
But
And
I
I,
tell you what, I think the Australian public would be giving plenty of pats on the backs and buying him beers if that is the case. Because
I,
my oh my, wasn't that a gallant effort to be able to make it over the try line with his,
I might
he had
have,
about what 20-25 meters to
yeah,
run or
yeah,
something like
and he
that, and he
beat
had backs
and he
chasing him.
beat some decent
Yeah.
speed too. Mate of
um.
mine did his ACL about 25 years ago, diving to score a line, couldn't get up. So I have seen it happen, but what a way to go down. Look, there's definitely things to work on. As I say, the fence out wide and whether that was connected enough. There was still way too much space there. Whether that warrants major personnel change, I don't know. This feels like one of those wins where you sort of go, all right, if everyone's fit, you've done more than enough to play again.
Mm.
So I don't know. I feel like this far out, not 12 hours, only a few hours afterwards.
Mm.
I reckon I'll be loath to make too many changes at this point, but
Yeah.
I guess we'll know more midweek as to how fit or otherwise everyone is.
Yeah, we'll wait and see with bated breath to see what the injury toll is after
Mm.
today, because we have been going through it successively with injuries, and I think I want to paint a little bit of a holistic picture about how we kind of got here. So, no Alan Alatoa, no Valentini, big disruption throughout the week, losing a couple of hooking stocks, and then also big injuries throughout the game, meaning we had to field a halfback in and around the center, like in and around the centers, because Len Ikitau went off at one point for
Mm.
bringing on Tate McDermott. And so this is by no means where the Wallabies wanted to be in such a high pressure cauldron of rugby at Ellis Park, having to do the impossible to come back from 22-0 down. So this is truly an amazing game and it's worth celebrating. It is an anomaly. So then to be able to bring in some tactical analysis into this, I think what a lot of people do, as you and I have done previously, is be wary of what the effectiveness of the Wallabies defense is. But when you concede 38 unanswered points, and a lot of it was in broken field, but there were opportunities when the Wallabies manipulated the Springboks defense.
Mm.
And that was very much coming down to the rush defense. The rush defense was
Yep.
grossly exposed by pinpoint accurate passes from James O'Connor, who was willing to throw the long arcing passes to then get on the outside of Curly Aronsar and Edwill van der Merwe, and it happened on a couple of occasions.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show that if you spread the ball that fast and you are running such an aggressive line speed defense as the Springboks were running, it is equally, if not more, at times dangerous for your own line
Mm.
integrity than the what people have been calling passive line defense to make tackles that the Wallabies have been running. And I think I did a full Wallabies defensive analysis video, I think about 3 videos ago. So you can go back and check that out. It's just game footage of 12 minutes straight of me analyzing the Wallabies defense. But I think that a lot of people need to be understanding that just because something is fast and stopping something in its tracks once does not mean that it necessarily works as a system when you look over 3 or 4 phases. And I think what the Wallabies did very well in this game when the points weren't being leaked, after the initial 22 minutes, which is terrible, but the Wallabies scored 38. So, is it down to attack? Is it down to defense? You've got to really look at what the Wallabies are doing in and around the rucks and what they're doing after some meterage has been conceded on the flanks, because they do come with a lot of line speed, trying to stop them in center field when they come back off that edge. And the Springboks acknowledged this. They tried to switch and go back to the blind side a couple of times because they wanted to avoid the Wallabies rush that was set and ready to go. But the likes of James Slipper, Tom Hooper, Fraser McWright, they were on the ball consistently, and we are now good enough and making strong enough tackles. And this is down to someone who you heralded earlier, Nick Frost, who had a very, very, very good defensive game, if not the best defensive performance I've seen. He was whacking blokes like Eben Etzebeth. We know that he's not particularly the strongest defensive player, but he did not shirk it. And so I just think that the Wallabies were very good at the detail. And I think Joe Schmidt will be happy with how well the Wallabies were able to win that breakdown pressure. And Rassie Erasmus admitted as much as well in the post-match. How did you kind of view that breakdown battle? Because I didn't remember seeing a whole lot of Marco van Staden or Sia Khaleesi after that initial bit, as well as Peter Steptoe at the actual breakdown. Like in the game, they were very powerful.
Yeah, it's a good question. I wrote early on that the box carry clean was extraordinary, and McWright didn't really get many opportunities probably in the first half, if we're honest, because the carry clean was so good. But I think he came into the breakdown contest as the Wallabies came into the game, as they all collectively grew in confidence with every positive moment that they all had individually and collectively. And I think, it was a classic case of breakdown of confidence. Confidence brewed more confidence, which brought more confidence, which brought, and then, then they get in the bounce of the ball, and then, they're making turnovers into line breaks, and that's where it all flowed from there. So they got particularly through the second half, their timing was really good. You've talked about Hooper, you mentioned James Slipper getting one as well. McWright's timing was really good throughout. So he certainly wasn't alone there. Most of them were. I think they picked their moments particularly well, and that was probably come from the first 20 odd minutes when the carry clean was so efficient from the box that there just wasn't any opportunities there. It meant that Australia had to, sometimes sit back and go, no, there it is there. And, as the game got on, again, you present the right pictures to Ben O'Keefe and he does start rewarding that sort of thing. They played it superbly well.
Yeah, and you have to start playing rugby in the right parts of the field, and I think actually most of the Wallabies' tries came from their own half, so they were very much against the run of play. Tom Wright, yes. Suali's intercept, yes. Max Jorgensen, yes. So it was a lot of tries from long distance. We didn't actually get a whole lot of that territorial game necessarily where we wanted to. It was actually 61% territory to the Springboks, 31 for the Wallabies. So we were very territory poor. But I think a big part of being able to negate the pressure and the momentum of that was the kicking of Nic White. And he was under pressure all day from the likes of Eben Etzebeth. And I think that although Tate McDermott brought good energy when he went into the 9 slot, as opposed to being in the midfield on the wing, Nic White did a very good job, understated compared to his impact on the Lions game, but nonetheless very impressive. I think the last thing I just want to mention before we wrap
let me just touch on that before you switch there. White has always had this ability with his box kick to be able to, I don't know, almost bend his leg and his hip around at the weirdest angles, and he can.
Bow legs.
It's. I was trying not to say it was the bow legs, but I think it might be the bow legs. That he's just able to get a box kick in where you think no one should be able to, and his kicking effectiveness and the height and length and everything that he was able to get is so easily taken for granted that when he finally does go off on the whatever it was on the hour, 65 minutes, whenever it was, and McDermott does go into 9, one of his first box kicks was inside the Wallabies 22. They were maybe 15 off their own line, and his box kick didn't make the 10-meter line. Whereas White in the same situation was often getting halfway and beyond. So he was McDermott's kick for everything that he does well in his game. His sniping and his instinct for space is very, very good. But his kick and pass is just not near the same level, and that's why he's not starting Test.
Brett, it's a very good point that you make. It really is, because I think that a lot of people are underappreciating how much of a finesse and skill position number 9 really is. We do love to see the running lines. We do like to see the little jinx, and we do like to see Tate McDermott breaking games open. But it is really the skill set of Nic White that is so crucial at Test level. And that's why someone like Ryan Lonergan being in the squad now, who has a very similar skill set, it really excites me. And we'll see, Jake Gordon's still obviously injured. Who knows what Joe Schmidt will be able to pull out of the hat next week in Cape Town. I'm very excited because I would love to see Ryan Lonergan, but it felt like the right choice in the end to keep that powder dry and to stick with the tried and tested. I just want to touch on the likes of Max Jorgensen quickly before we wrap up.
Yeah.
He is a generational talent. He's 20 years old, and he's truly continues to overshadow the stellar heights of his club mate Joseph Akuso Suoli'i. I was unsure whether, because he definitely wasn't the quickest on the park, I don't think, but he made some of the Springboks wingers also look like the Lions wingers, and he made it go in and away. And it was very, very good to see that he can do that against the best of the best. Scrum cap wearing whippets of the South African Springboks. A quick comment on him, because he's not only a quick rugby player, his IQ, his body language, his eyes when he was when he scored that try, he was fooling the defender. And I think it was either Marnie Lebok or Damian Willems there in the backfield. I'm not quite sure. So in the comments below, let me know who it was. But he was setting that up from a while away. And I just think that with the injuries to Dylan Peach, no Filippo Gunu, we were obviously very keen on Max Jorgensen. We were unsure how he's going to come back after his injury in Super Rugby Pacific, but he's hit the ground running and he hasn't looked back since. He's that's his wing spot now, and I'd like to see him keep growing in the wing spot. But now with Dylan Peach injured, and you're a little bit unsure, does another speedster in Corey Toole come in? But first, let me just get your words on Max Jorgensen, because he has been genuinely epic.
Yeah, he was so good. He was so good. And I've I haven't, what's the way of describing it? Even skeptical is probably too strong, but I've been wondering whether, this is just another one of these young kids that comes into Australian rugby. They slot straight into the Waratahs. They get overhyped by the Sydney media machine and don't really deliver. And yes, he had his moment at Twickenham last year, but what's he actually done? What's he actually doing week to week? Well, week to week over the last 6 weeks has been pretty bloody good, hasn't it? He was exceptional through the Lion series. He was exceptional again at Joburg. And the thing in all of this is that and the thing that we've probably forgotten about is that he's switched wings. He played on the left wing against Fiji. He played on the left wing most of the season for New South Wales. Tristan Riley or whoever it might have been was on the right. He was on the left wing at Twickenham last year. He and Harry Potter switched for the first Lions test. And at the time I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting. I'm not sure how this is going to go. And it went fine. It went really, really well. So yeah, maybe this is his spot. Maybe he can be that, that super dangerous, almost like another Tom Wright as a
Mm,
hybrid fullback from
mm,
on the right edge. We we don't know much about his kicking game because we haven't really seen it. We haven't really had to. But there's no arguing his impact anymore.
mm,
His ability to and his instincts for space are really strong. And for a
mm.
20-year-old kid, it's hard not to get excited about that. And excitement leads to more hype, and round and round we go again. So yeah, I can't fault him at all. He's playing exceptionally well. His ability to, even when he's beaten early on in games, his ability to start winning the aerial contest and building momentum off that is really exciting. And so yeah, yeah, we might have a special one there on the right edge at the moment.
Yeah, and I think that fundamentally, a lot of what happened in the game comes down to individuals being that good.
Yeah,
Tom Wright scores a try and sets up an amazing try purely off the acceleration and power of his own game. Max
yeah.
Jorgensen very much the same, and Joseph Akuso Suaalii. So that's three tries out of six that are just three tries out of six as well, plus the Harry Wilson one that Harry Wilson finished off.
Mm.
It is, and Angus Bell very very good as well. But you do have to
The
have
the
some of that
offload
top
for
end.
Wilson's first one. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to have some of that top end X factor class to truly be able to compete with the best in the world. And we do have some of those athletes on their
Mm.
day, and it's just so reassuring to see. So to finish it all off, what are the big work ons that we need to work on as a team for next week? Because let's be honest,
Oh,
you can't go down 22-0 to the Springboks and expect to win
no.
any other day.
No, 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 no. Um and it's a funny yeah, again, for anyone who's just been watching every Australian or Australian adjacent podcast they can over the last 24 hours. I'm apologizing if I'm repeating myself again, but I said in the 8-9 post-mortem that and Harry made the point, I should say, that this is going to be one of those weeks where both teams might be working on what they thought was a pretty ordinary line out as a starting point. That's certainly going to be one. Look, I think there is still so much for the Wallabies to work on that they'll basically start the week with a rough review as if it was a loss,
Mm,
but then they go into preparations for this test with the confidence of a win, and not just any old win, a quite extraordinary win that breaks a 6 decades drought. So it's
mm,
going to be a weird feeling because
mm,
the review still needs to be fairly harsh. I think it still needs to point
absolutely.
out all the defensive issues, all the turnovers they did concede. They did a lot right, but they'll know that there's plenty that they didn't quite get right too. So yeah, I can imagine that this week, as they move from Joburg down to Cape Town, is going to be pretty tough, and it's going to need to be because as we know about this Wallaby team, we've known for a long, long time they're only as good as their next game, and their ability
Yep.
to string two really good performances together has been something that has plagued them, not just for this playing group, it's been for a few generations of players now.
No, absolutely. The roller coaster of the Wallabies is unfortunately something that we've become very
Yeah.
accustomed to in years gone by. I'd say the three big areas for me is, yep, as you've mentioned, line out.
Yeah.
Being able to deal with that new threat of the Springboks being able to expose the inside channel on the defensive line, so just being able to have someone to be aware that they need to keep
Mm.
chasing, that the Springboks will go back into that space they've just cleared. Number three, you have to be better in the air. We cannot be giving the likes of Edwill Mandemerva and also Curtly Aronson that kind
Yeah.
of aerial dominance. It was quite poor. Like, let's be clear, like we were winning no balls at all.
Yeah.
And I think the third one, which I think a lot of people may be surprised that I'm saying but we won't get that sort of parity in a scrum likely again. I think we did get quite monstered at times. So having being able to just be aware that yes, Nick Frost can compete at the line out. Probably, depending on what the side looks like, probably just with Tom Donnelly, the new line out coach,
Yeah.
thing probably going to have to be we're going to have to compete a little bit more because I can imagine they're going to go for but they're going to get some more penalties and go for some more lineouts, and that's where we've got to stop it at the source if we can't turn that defensive aspect around. So, um, by no means at all is this a dominant performance by the Wallabies. It just happens that enough of the moments went our way, and we had the X
Mm.
factors players to be able to make them pay for those little tiny mistakes that often actually looked quite ominous, like for the Tom Wright try down the wing, and also the Joseph Kusa-Suaalii intercept. Had those balls gone to hand, very likely the Wallabies would be under their sticks with the Springboks putting another 5-7 points on. So honestly, the scoreline doesn't truly reflect how close this game was, nor how dominant the Springboks were in pockets, and nor how poor the Wallabies were in some kind of areas, like kicking balls out on the full, getting it over the dead ball line, and obviously getting kind of caught out of shape in the defense. But Brett, I think as Australians, we should also just absolutely enjoy this win. We're second on the Rugby Championship ladder now. Stop the clock. Not quite yet. We've got to beat the All Blacks, but
Well, how rough's that? The Kiwis couldn't even let us have their moment. They have to win by 17. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah. No, it's
Give us a week.
We can't have it all. But you know what? I'll take a 62-year drought-breaking win at Ellis Park, and also the resurgence of James O'Connor in a time when we are so low on fly half stock. So, Brett, please enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Enjoy the beginning of the week. I'm sure you'll be doing great work on the podcast with Harry Jones. Everyone who's watching, please head to the 8-9 combo. Watch their stuff. They're really great. You can find Brett on X at BMAX Sport. Is that correct?
Yep, BMC Sport. Yep, that's right.
Yep, BMC Sport. And then obviously YouTube for one of their platforms, and also Spotify and all the other platforms that you can find your platforms on. So go and find their stuff. Always tune in. Later in the week, I'm going to do a tactical analysis of the Wallabies and their game. And I'm also going to do a little bit of we're obviously going to do preview and team reviews later in the week. Always like and subscribe. And I always want to hear from you guys in the comments, and reach out on X at John B. Fergo if you guys are on that platform as well. Brett McKay, thank you so much for taking time out of your luxurious Sunday in the sun from a Wallabies victory. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day. Thanks so much for joining me for this review, and I hope that you continue to enjoy the week as a winner.
Yeah, thanks, mate. It's been a good day so far. Let's hope it can continue for another week. It'd be great.
Yeah, at least. Let's go for another one. Cheers to all of you guys. Enjoy your week.